Well, my first job was interesting to me because Elza Hardy came in the office not long after I had arrived and said, "Bruce, we've got to go up to a Girl Scout camp today, and I want you to go with me and show you what we're doing. We're working with the Girl Scout camp up there." So we went up there, and part of the activity was to lead them in singing Smokey the Bear. And I'm thinking, here I am, right out of the Army, a second lieutenant, running a gun battery, firing 105 shells, and now I'm going to sit here and listen to singing Smokey the Bear. Well, we headed back to Lufkin, and I was chiding Elza a little bit about it, and he said, "Well, don't think it's so funny, because tomorrow we go back and I'm going to let you do the leading." And I thought, oh, I guess I better start thinking about going back to Oregon. So anyhow, the next morning we got up. I didn't sleep too well, and I thought, what am I going to do? So we got up there, and when we got to the camp director told us that they had an emergency back home in Houston, and so all the girls had to pack up and leave. Whew, I said, okay. So we headed back. But working under LZ as an assistant forester at that time, mostly we worked with small landowners to help them understand forestry and go out on their land and even do a few management plans. And one thing or another that has changed drastically over my time and since, where we've had, at that time I think we had 6 consulting foresters, that is private foresters that worked with landowners throughout the state, and I could name them on one hand and one finger. And we must have closer to 600, maybe not 600, but 300 or 400 now. And so our responsibility there kind of gave way to recommending they get a consultant forester, and I was glad to see that change made. We had some outstanding consulting foresters that worked for us at one time and kind of got their sea legs, so to speak, and then went into private business and are doing quite well at it. So with that, I learned a whole lot about the forestry and how it was done in the Texas Forest Service. And then Ken Burton came back from annual leave, and Ken was one of the finest men that I've ever worked with or for. Ken had a requirement that when you came in the office, and I noticed that before he got back, that everybody came in and shook hands and said good morning and so forth. And so I asked Elza about that, and he said, "Ken Burton requires that." And I said, "Oh, okay." So anyhow, that was the way it was done. Well, not until later, when I moved to some other districts, did I see that that wasn't a bad idea, because some people came in madder than a hornet, wouldn't speak to anybody, for the rest of the day. But Ken was just a super fella, and so I learned a lot. Another thing that I learned there was we had young foresters, as myself, had to serve as alternate dispatchers on the weekend. And that meant that while fires were burning, that you would come in and work initially with a more experienced dispatcher to call fires in, to take calls from the public, take calls from the airplane, the lookout towers, the crews. So you had the telephone ringing, the airplane giving you messages of where a fire was, the lookout towers, crews going to the fire. And on a hectic, bad fire day, that was a pretty busy experience. And you got good at it, you had to. I've often told people, where did you get your best experience to become a director or supervisor of people? And I said, there are 2 things. One was being an alternate dispatcher on a weekend. You had to juggle all these balls in the air as to what had to be done. And the other was raising 4 teenagers. And so I worked at that for about a year or so, and then the southern pine beetle epidemic began to speed up down in District 4 at Woodville, and I was reassigned or transferred to Woodville, Texas. I was still single. The secretaries at both offices were looking at my mail from Louisiana to see how many letters a week I would get from Diane. And so I went down to Woodville and rented a room down there, which I had done at Lufkin, and went to work for Art Green. Now, about this time, Ken Burton, of course, was a former Navy guy. Art Green was a combat engineer in World War II. Al Fowaller worked for General George Patton, who had a reputation, and he preceded another director that wasn't quite that bad. So all of that is to say that we had a lot of district foresters that were World War II veterans and more mature than some of the rest of us. And Art Green was difficult to work for. And every other word was a cuss word, and everybody disliked him. And so Art and I got to trying to work together, and we'd go squirrel hunting together. And so he invited me over to the house, and I would eat at their house. His wife was a wonderful person. So I had the blessings of a number of people, and then I was asked to go back to Linden as an assistant district forester, where I worked under Bill Chestnut, another fine fella. District 1 Linden had more fires every year than the other 4 or 5 districts put together, so I got a lot of fire experience. And I got a lot of good training under Bill. And then I was asked to move to Conroe, Texas, to take over the district forester position. And Henry Stykes moved to an assistant district forester position. Conroe was a quiet district, relatively speaking, because most of its land was owned by big timber companies, and they helped keep the fire situation down. And so as a district forester there, I had some more experiences that trained me. And I will tell this to every young forester. Every position that you go to, you learn something from it. If you don't, you're not doing your job. And you learn how to deal with people. You learn how to work in different situations.